Cindy Brooks here, who is a fellow native of Church Point, Louisiana, who once interviewed me. Was it on KI? Okay. Oh, yes.
And now it's fun.
Well, Cindy was getting ready to interview me on a book by just an awful person named Kenneth Allen McDuff. And if you all have been in Austin long enough to know, you know what a terrible serial killer he was. And Cindy, and she before we were on the air, Cindy leaned over to me and she said, "Gary, are you nervous?" I said, "No, I work in the admissions office at the University of Texas. Mass murder is really quite easy." And so the departure is that this was an admissions story, which, quite frankly, I'm far more qualified to write about than the first 3 books I had written. This is the story of Heman Marion Sweatt, who in February of 1946 decided to apply for admission to the University of Texas Law School. It's funny I'm still employed there because I've written 2 books about the 2 darkest days in the university's history. The sniper on the top of the university tower, the Charles Whitman book, and this, which was really a bad day for us, and I'm speaking as part of the University of Texas family. The job I had prepared me for this book because, and this book prepared me to be a much better admissions officer as well. I crank out data. There are people in this room who know I crank out a lot of data. And it worked out very, very well for me when it came to understanding why there are large portions of the population of the state of Texas who have problems with the state of Texas. And we will never be able to effectively address those problems until we recognize that. And this book, as an admissions officer, this book helped me do that a great deal. So I'm going to read what is basically the very beginning, which is kind of forms a synopsis of the entire book. On February 26, 1943, Heman Marion Sweatt, a 33-year-old, 5'5", 130-pound mail carrier from Houston, entered the main building of the University of Texas at Austin, and he carried with him a copy of his undergraduate transcript. His graduation from Wiley College in 1934 meant that he was qualified to enter the University of Texas Law School, except for one thing: he was an African American. Sweatt was a member of a delegation of the Texas State Conference of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The group had been formed to meet with UT President Theophilus Painter. Painter had assembled a small group of university administrators for the meeting. At the time, the 9-year-old main building, capped by an imposing tower, was fast becoming the trademark of the University of Texas. But for the visiting African American delegation, it was also a symbol of what they had been denied since the very founding of the Republic of Texas: higher education. The confrontation took place on the ground floor in room 1, right across the hall from where my office is right now. Then and today it houses the office of the registrar. The president of the Progressive Voters League and the leader of the NAACP delegation began by reading a statement that included an assertion that Negro citizens of Texas were entitled to the same educational opportunities as whites. After much discussion, Hester signaled Heman Sweatt to speak up. Sweatt had said nothing up to that point. Sweatt could not have been more courteous or deferential, which made his words all the more powerful. He asked for permission to speak, then addressed the group in a soft, slow, measured tone. He wanted to be a lawyer, he said. Then he emphasized that he had a right to the same legal training as other Texas college graduates. At the time, Texas provided no professional schools for its black citizens, and if Texas really wanted to provide for the professional education of Negroes, it could. Then he presented Painter with a transcript from Wiley College and formally asked for admission to the University of Texas Law School. The meeting was the opening round of what would become the lawsuit, Sweatt versus Painter. His application to UT Law set in motion events that appear surreal today. Heman Sweatt will never darken the doors of the University of Texas, said Grover Sellers, the Attorney General of Texas. To keep this kind, gentle, mild-mannered, and introverted mailman from entering its all-white institution, the state of Texas spent millions of dollars in the 1940s to transform a glorified trade school run by a principal into a university complete with graduate programs. The Texas legislature also created a parallel university which had a law school before it had a mathematics department, where none had existed before. It was intended to be a university of the first class for Negroes. While trying to prevent Sweatt from enrolling in UT Austin, a panicked Texas political establishment spent more money on what was called Negro higher education than it had during the entire previous history of its state. The actions of Heman, Marion Sweatt, and his supporters seriously undermined the separate but equal doctrine provided a precedent for racial segregation's legal demise in Brown versus Board of Education. From 1946 through 1950, Sweatt made it possible for the NAACP and its supporters to force America to deal with the true meaning of its own Constitution. And as Sweatt said, it was an example of the progress of democracy. In December 1946, the Houston Informer, one of the largest black newspapers in the country, chose Heman Sweatt as its Man of the Year. The owner and editor, Carter Walker Wesley, himself a veteran of civil rights struggles, wrote, "As a symbol, Heman Marion Sweatt marks the emergence of the Negro in Texas as an adult and citizen." By the time Sweatt versus Painter came before the Supreme Court, Sweatt had become a lead player in a master plan by the NAACP to end the American apartheid. The tale of Heman Sweatt is an overlooked but crucial chapter in a much larger drama that began long before his birth. Those who make history often travel a long and dangerous road, and they are never alone. From the 1920s through 1960s, plaintiffs in civil rights cases literally put their names and sometimes their lives on the line. In the 1940s and 50s in Texas, newspaper and magazine coverage made Sweatt a moniker for a monumental and what some considered a dangerous social, educational, and legal change. The publicity made Heman Marion Sweatt a hero to some and a villain to others. Finding an African American in Texas who was qualified to attend the University of Texas Law School, who could be relied upon to face microscopic scrutiny and a multi-year disruption of his personal life, who would follow through by walking alone through the doors of an all-white institution, who would be a man and do it with pride and dignity and not hate as others were hating him, was not easy. They found such a man, a mailman, in a little house on Delano Street in the 3rd Ward of Houston. Thank you.